Hello, everyone. This is Jhungsoo Park, professor at Ewha Women's University. Aejin Kim and Jina Kim and I, as a research team, we dig into phenomena. How can we solve this kind of the divergence of haves and have-nots? Is getting the larger and larger. Normally, this kind of redistribution function is supposed to be done by central government in traditional public finance. However, we thought that is not enough. So there must be another or the other the solution. So we focused on some decentralization and the role of local governments. Let's get started. My presentation goes as follow this. From background introduction and some theoretical the relations of concepts and concretes, and I will explain some empirical setup and data set, and we'll explain our empirical results. And I'd like to wrap up as a conclusion and some deliver policy implications. Background information. You may know Thomas Piketty, 21st century the capital. He wrote that, and it is very profound, the implication to our scholar, the society. Our economy, the growing steadily. However, the gap between haves and have-nots are deeper and deeper, and you can see clearly in this the figure. In 1985, their gap is not that much large, but in 2015. The bottom 10's income share and the top 10 percentiles the income share gap is like this large. So we can say gap between the rich and the poor in OECD countries having reached record high these days, and the average income of top 10 percentile being about 10 times higher than that of bottom 10%. This is really a big the problem these days. How should we propose enable large portion of population, many to enjoy the wealth generated by the economic growth? We thought that it is inclusive growth, a concept that comprehensively pursue economic growth through mitigating the inequality. So until recently, inclusive growth has focused on the study between individuals' income distribution and economic growth. However, gaps in income between a region within a country, such as financial conflict between northern part and the southern part of Italy, and in South Korea, the Seoul, Incheon, and Gyeonggi province, we call the metropolitan the areas, and the other regions gap is so huge. And the claim of independence in Spain's Catalonia region is so notorious. The relationship between fiscal decentralization and inclusive growth policy needs to be analyzed in terms of income redistribution. Traditionally, the fiscal decentralization enhance efficiency of local supply and the local public goods. It promotes regional economic growth and finally trickle-down effect through the growth of local economy. But this kind of fiscal decentralization in traditional public finance weaken the local government's control over sound fiscal management that undermine macroeconomic stability, including distribution function. So it causes inequality by increasing the income gap between regions. So our research purpose is to analyze the impact of decentralization on inclusive growth, especially for redistribution, including the expansion of public welfare and the reduction of inequality. So we aim to present fiscal decentralization policy that can achieve inclusive growth based on income redistribution. So our key research question is, what is the relationship between fiscal decentralization and inclusive growth? Let's dig into some relations, theoretical, preliminary of inclusive growth and the decentralization. Economic growth, the poor benefit from the system, and the income of the poor increase faster than the income of the entire population, and thereby alleviating the inequality level. And World Bank, IMF, OECD, and World Economic Forum, those are the organizations said that the unanimously inclusive growth as the economic growth through productive employments and alleviating inequality and the economic performance across the society, fair distribution. Those kind of definition is so common in the world organizations. Fiscal decentralization as degree of fiscal autonomy and decision-making authority and responsibility transferred from the central to local. And many previous study measures fiscal decentralization by quantifying and using its proxy as a measure of revenue and expenditure shares between central and local government. So we would like to explore some revenue decentralization and tax decentralization and expenditure decentralization. This is a very interesting the figure through fuzzy set analysis. We can categorize the OECD countries in fiscal decentralization dimension, high, medium, and low level. The analysis dimension is the three the subject: tax authority and spending authority and expenditure share of local government. This the expenditure share of local government means it is some not the real, but the phenomenal the decentralization level. So in the higher and fully decentralized countries, they enjoy tax authority and spending authority, including the expenditure of local governments in local the governments. But in Austria, Chile, Ireland, Israel, Turkey, those are the non-decentralized countries, so they do not enjoy the tax authority, spending authority, expenditure of local government, not at all. But unfortunately, the South Korea is this kind of low level. They enjoy high level of spending, expenditure of local governments, but that is a phenomenon, but not real. The decision-making authority was not devolved to decentralization, to local government. So we would like to dig in relationship between fiscal decentralization and inclusive growth. Fiscal decentralization can affect income inequality by alleviating some of the redistribution function implemented by the central government to the government. And the relationship between fiscal decentralization and income distribution needs to be dig in. And given the decentralization occurs more actively in the area housing and welfare and health and education. Most of the early researches in public finance, I mentioned that the relationship between decentralization and development or the economic growth is focused on distribution. That means enhancing efficiency, not the enhancing equity. But recently, the concept of inclusive growth, they focused on fiscal decentralization and income inequality very recently. And the previous study said that fiscal decentralization contribute the regional economic development and the provision of social infrastructure, and in the results, consequently alleviate income inequality. This is one of Oates' the decentralization theorem, but mainly it focused on efficiency, not the equity. And classical fiscal federalism, the documents and the materials said that decentralization negatively affects income distribution and could deepen the inequality. But these days, in the mark of the researches came through, the welfare and income distribution level of residents are improved when fiscal authority of local government remain at an appropriate level through the Laffer curve. That means in the initial stage, getting the large the local shares of the fiscal authority, then it improves the level of the fiscal the inequality. So it is the curing the income distribution. But along the other the tip point, then the decrease, that means centralization could improve this kind of income inequality problem. So we set up the empirical the model through panel corrected the standard error, the estimation, and Lind-Mellom method of testing U or inverse U shape. That means this regression model and this the U test the model can test of hypothesis of fiscal decentralization would contribute to inclusive growth to a certain level. So we're gonna show our hypothesis through our data. The dependent variable is inclusive growth, and independent variables are revenue decentralization and tax decentralization and expenditure decentralization and other control variables, economic, political, and social, and the other. So dependent variable are the three the measures: Gini gap and the labor income share and the social welfare expenditure. That is the respectively individual income distribution, functional income distribution, and the distribution policy measures. Independent variable, I said that the revenue decentralization is two categories: revenue, including the non-tax and the grants, and the tax decentralization and expenditure decentralization. And control variables. Economic factors are employment rate and pre-tax poverty the level and the GDP growth rates. So it is a control of economic the implication to the level of income the distribution through the inclusive growth. And the national competitive level, and government type, local government type, political leaning of policymakers, and democracy level, political, social factors. And the other environmental factors are elderly population share and population density and urbanizations are controlled. These are our empirical the model, the results. With the control variables, the revenue decentralization could impact on the labor income shares significantly. And tax the decentralization significantly improve the income, the fair income distribution and the share of social welfare expenditure. And the expenditure decentralization also could improve fair the income distribution. And this is some tricky but complicated the results of labor the income share negatively the impacted. And control variables are most the significant and as we hypothesized. These are the U-shaped test, the relationship between fiscal decentralization and inclusive growth. These are the revenue the decentralization. These are tax decentralization. And these are expenditure decentralization. You can clearly see some U-shapes in the revenue and the tax decentralization in the Gini, the coefficient, income fair distribution. And the income shares and the revenue and the social, and the expenditure decentralization, you can clearly you can see the inverse the U shape as we the hypothesized. And the social welfare expenditure, the clear the U shape in the tax decentralization, and some the complicated the results in the social welfare expenditure. Let me conclude the research the results as the conclusion and the policy implications. Our study examined the effect of fiscal decentralization on inclusive growth through empirical analysis using the panel corrected the standard error model in OECD, the countries from 1995 to 2017. We found that tax decentralization contribute to the inclusive growth. Tax decentralization works in a way that improve the Gini coefficients and higher level the local government income from local taxes, the more likely and provide necessary the public goods to local residents directly. That means decision authority of the local governments improves the fair distribution of income in a certain level as a U shape. And the revenue decentralization had a positive effect on labor income shares. Non-tax revenue and the intergovernmental subsidies from the central government contribute to the labor income shares. And the expenditure, the decentralization improve the fair income distribution, but aggravated labor income shares. It is some contradicted the expectation. It could explain the boosting local industry. However, it is capital intensive. So as a result, it is not the improve the labor share in the labor income shares. So the other the control variables, economic factors, such as employment rates, pre-tax poverty rates, and the elderly population and GDP growth had a significant effect on inclusive growth. And final the policy implications. We said that the tax decentralization is quite the influential and positive impact on inclusive growth because this is decision-making authority decentralization to the local residents, the shares, the burden. So in a certain level, until in the certain level, the fiscal decentralization can improve fair fair the income distribution. So among three measures, expenditure decentralization, revenue decentralization, and tax decentralization. Tax decentralization is the most important factors in this the model. So we can say decision-making authority matters a lot. And below the threshold, I said that the revenue and tax decentralization increases, but at a certain level, the fair income the distribution worsen at the fiscal decentralization increases. So we can confirm the Laffer curve hypothesis of fiscal decentralization and inclusive growth. I'd like to wrap up my presentation. You can clearly see until the certain point, not only the centralization, but also decentralization can improve not only the local public good efficiently and effectively, but also improve fair distribution of income of local residents. So in this, the quite divergent and the big gap between haves and have-nots society, like South Korea, we can get some fair distribution of income, and the more we devolve the fiscal authority to the local government. So our governments, the policy, the trend of the make the more local the shares of tax could improve the income distribution as the whole country. I think that's it for my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.